You ever see a cop reach for his belt and realize you're about to deliver the best punchline of your life? That's where I was, standing on my dock, laughing, while the HOA president watched from her $1 million deck, waiting for me to get arrested. What she didn't know was that the water beneath that dock, every drop of it, legally belonged to me. 3 months earlier, I was just Rex Thornton, 52, a retired electrician trying to survive the silence of an empty Denver house. My wife, Clara, had passed the year before. Every corner still smelled like her lavender perfume mixed with hospital antiseptic, the kind of scent that can break a man without warning. Then one Tuesday, a letter arrived. Estate auction notice, property of Jasper Thornton. My uncle, the old hermit who'd lived on a Montana lake for decades. He'd passed away, leaving behind something called Lake Reserve Parcel with territorial water rights. I didn't know what that meant. But with Clara gone, maybe a change of scenery was what I needed. So I drove north. The air in Montana hit different. Sharp, clean, and honest. The auction was held right on the property. 3 acres of paradise, a cedar cabin from the 1960s, and a dock that looked hand-built by someone who respected the craft. Uncle Jasper's fingerprints were everywhere. Tight joints, balanced design, a man who built things to last. I bought the property for $150,000. It seemed fair for a lakefront cabin. What I didn't realize was that I had just purchased the very heart of a multi-million-dollar community. They called it Pine Lake Estates. 47 luxury homes wrapped around my lake like a diamond necklace. Each one sold with exclusive water access. 2 weeks after moving in, I met her, Delilah Hale, HOA president, power walker, clipboard queen, and self-appointed goddess of all things compliant. She arrived while I was replacing old dock planks. "Welcome to Pine Lake Estates," she said, stepping onto my property like she was doing me a favor. "I'm Delilah, HOA president. We need to discuss your compliance issues." She listed violations faster than a traffic cop at rush hour. Dock setbacks, visual uniformity, architectural harmony. I wiped the sawdust from my hands. "Lady, I bought this at public auction. Maybe let me figure out what I actually own before you start telling me what's wrong with it." Her smile froze solid. "Mr. Thornton, we have standards here." And that's when I realized she didn't see me as a neighbor. She saw me as contamination. 3 days later, she was back, this time with an environmental inspector. A man named Dale, wearing a crooked state logo polo and holding a clipboard that looked fresh off a printer. Delilah puffed up beside him like a prosecutor. "Mr. Thornton, we've had reports of environmental damage from your dock modifications." I watched Dale measure the shoreline, muttering notes like wood, touches water, and fish visible, but something felt off. Maybe it was the Ford F-150 parked nearby. The one labeled Dale's Fine Furniture. Or maybe it was 30 years as an electrician giving me that sixth sense for fake credentials. So I called the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. "Hi, I'm checking on an inspection," I said. The woman on the phone paused. "Sir, we don't have any inspector named Dale." I put the call on speaker. Dale's face drained of color. "Want to explain that, Dale?" He ran, full sprint, dropped his fake ID in the gravel and peeled out like a cartoon villain. Delilah didn't even blink. "That just proves my point," she huffed. "You're intimidating official personnel," I laughed. "Lady, your guy just committed a felony." But she wasn't backing down. "That property should never have been sold outside the community," she said coldly. "You'll hear from our lawyers." I didn't know it yet, but that was the start of the war. That night, I called a local real estate attorney. He reviewed my paperwork and said the words that changed everything. "Mr. Thornton, you didn't just buy a lakefront cabin. You bought the water." Turns out, my uncle's old deed included something called territorial water extraction rights, a leftover from 19th century mining law. Every spring that fed Pine Lake started on my land. In other words, I legally controlled the source of the entire community's lake water. Delilah hadn't realized it, but our whole neighborhood, the lakefront views, the private docks, the property values, all depended on the water flowing through my property. 2 days later, I got a letter stamped Urgent HOA Emergency Session. Delilah was rallying the homeowners to sue me. The agenda accused me of fraudulent ownership threatening community stability. That's when Garrett Flynn showed up, a local surveyor and part-time fishing guide. "Rex, I heard Delilah's planning a war," he said, stepping out of his truck. "I got one of those letters, too. She's been trying to run me off my boathouse for years." We spent the afternoon over coffee, paperwork, and the smell of old cedar. Garrett pulled up maps and statutes on his laptop. "See this?" he said, tracing thin blue lines. "These springs feed the lake, all on your property. That means you control every drop that reaches Pine Lake Estates." My heart sank and soared all at once. I finally understood why Delilah was panicking and why she tried to scare me out. Later that night, my phone rang. "Mr. Thornton," Delilah said sweetly, "the community is prepared to purchase your parcel for $200,000. That's $50,000 above what you paid." I almost laughed. "Delilah, I think I'll hold on to my investment. Seems valuable," her tone snapped. "You don't understand. That property was never meant for outsiders. Maybe you should have checked your paperwork before your fake inspector came calling, I said. Click. That was the last civil word we exchanged. The next week was open warfare. Monday, dock ropes cut. Tuesday, support beams loosened. Wednesday, the word trespasser spray painted across the planks in blood red letters. The message was clear. Get out. Garrett inspected the damage. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, he said. Trying to make the dock unsafe without it collapsing. Classic intimidation. We set up hidden trail cameras, infrared, motion triggered, high resolution. Well, let's see who's been working the night shift, Garrett said, grinning. That night at 2:30 a.m., the cameras caught a figure creeping along the dock. Hoodie, gloves, wire cutters, spray paint. Then the phone rang. The audio came through crystal clear. Yeah, Mom, I'm almost done with the dock. No, nobody's around. The red paint like you wanted. The voice? Bradley Hale, 19, Delilah's son. And just like that, I had everything. The next morning, I found Bradley at the local coffee shop. Jittery, guilty, surrounded by the smell of burnt espresso. I slid into the booth. Morning, Bradley. Rough night? He looked up, pale. I don't know what you mean. I played 10 seconds of the recording. His voice echoed through the cafe. He crumbled. She said it was just security work, he whispered. Said you were dangerous. I didn't know it was illegal. Then the floodgates opened. He told me everything. The fake inspections, the vandalism, the harassment campaigns. 3 other homeowners over the past 5 years, each pressured into selling cheap. Each property, coincidentally, bought by Delilah's real estate firm. This wasn't neighborhood management. It was a pattern of manipulation. Garrett and I gathered the evidence. Photos, videos, audio recordings, legal documents. We compiled everything into a secure drive and sent it to the county sheriff and local media. Within a week, Pine Lake was trending on Montana News. HOA president under investigation for misuse of funds and property harassment. Delilah disappeared from public view. The community lawyered up. Homeowners started knocking on my door. Not with threats, but with apologies. Today, I still live in that cabin. The dock's been rebuilt, stronger than ever. Garrett and I fish there most evenings. Sometimes, when the sun hits the water just right, I think Clara would have loved it here. I didn't set out to own anyone's water. But maybe life has a way of balancing the scales, especially when people forget that decency isn't optional. So if you ever find yourself up against an HOA that thinks it owns you, remember, sometimes the law runs deeper than they realize. I'm Rex Thornton. And this is what happens when a community built on arrogance forgets who really owns the lake.